Let's look at writing to files. Now, we've been reading from files up to this point, and of course reading from files means that we are able to take the data from the file and do whatever we want with it. For example, maybe you can see what this program does. It's opening the file for reading. It's looping through the file line by line, each line being a string, of course. We're uppercasing the string and then printing that uppercased string. So results for this particular program is to show us each line of the file uppercased. Now, if we were interested in doing some sort of modification to the file and maybe writing that file back to either the same or to, more likely, to another file, we can choose to write to the file. Now, I want you to compare closely what I'm doing on line 5 with what I've done on line 3. You can see I'm still using the open function, but I've added a second argument. That second argument means open for writing. You may not have known this, but in operating system land, generally speaking, we only open up a file for reading or for writing. Not both usually. It is possible to do both, but that would be for a very specialized application. In fact, open has a default argument that we've never used because the default is always R. That means to read. So open can always be called with two arguments. The second argument explains or indicates whether we're opening the file for reading or for writing or for appending, which we'll look at in a moment. So the default argument R really never needs to be specified because usually we're opening a file for reading. In the second file, we're opening for writing, and you may have noticed I use a different variable name, WFH. This is my own notation. I'm just doing it for my own convenience. It just indicates to me that this is a write file. Again, we only open a file for reading or writing or for appending, not both. That means that when you're opening a file for reading, you can't write to it, and Python won't let you. Another thing to understand is that when we open up a file for writing, the file is truncated. That means it's blanked out, it's erased. We can say it's zeroed out. That's one way to put it. Oh, for goodness sake. I can't seem to get the Z to happen. It's because the mic is in front of my eyes. The file is zeroed out, blanked, right? Or we call it truncated, meaning that if the file exists, it's going to be completely erased when we open it. At the point that we open it, that file will disappear, and you can try that. It's not going to disappear from the operating system, but its contents will disappear. If the file is new, it'll just be opened and it'll be a brand new file, and that's what's going on here. Now, when we want to write to a file, and in this case, I'm just going to make a decision to write the uppercase line, and if afterwards, and I have to make sure to close the file. This isn't optional in this case. We're not going to see the results until we close the file. I am now basically transforming a file. I'm making a new copy of the file with the contents altered in some way. And I want you to look closely at my folder here because you can see I have a series of files here, and my new file is going to be called PyQ_up. And now when I run this script, it's going to open up that new file, PyQ_up, for writing, and we will see it appear in the file listing. We might have to open and close the folder to see it, but there it is. You can see that my output, nothing happened there because I'm not printing anymore. All I'm doing is writing. This is the write method of the file object. Again, if you tried to do this on FH, which was open for reading, it wouldn't allow it. Now we look at PyQ_up and we see there's the file. PyQ looked like this and PyQ_up looks like this. course, any modifications that we wish to do, we can do here in the for loop. If we wanted to just look at the first word of every line and write that to the file, or if we wanted to derive some other information about the data and write it to a file, we can do that. This is the approach to doing it. We open the file for writing. We call write when we want to write a line, and we close the file. Now, keep in mind, again, when you open the file for writing, its contents are truncated. They're erased. So if I were to just write hello and then exit and comment, well, I don't even need to comment the rest of this out, that file is going to get overwritten. Let's run it. Now when we look at Paiku Up, we see that it just says hello. In fact, and this I want to make extremely clear, even if we don't do anything to the file, even if we never write to it, it's still going to be truncated. So let me run this, in which we're only opening Paiku Up for writing and not doing anything else. We'll run that, and what we see in Paiku Up then is nothing at all. That's because writing to the file, that is opening the file for writing, will truncate the file. One thing, though, that we can do if we're interested in just adding to the file is opening up the file for appending. This means that the file will not be blanked out, and we can write lines of the file if we wish. In fact, what I'll do here, and I do have to remember to close the file, although the file does get closed when the script exits, I still want to do it explicitly, is I could run this a number of times, and I'm going to see that the file has been added to. Now, why didn't it drop down a line? That's kind of interesting, because when you're writing to a file, new lines have to be added explicitly. In fact, print adds those implicitly. When we print a line, it's going to print to the screen, and it's going to always drop down a line after each print statement. But write does not do that. So in order to write additional lines to the file, we would need to add the new line character. And here you can see I've gone ahead and added to that file some more. So usually we use appending to write log messages or something like that. It isn't really very common to write to a file or to append to a file, because normally we really just think about writing the file and completing the file in one program run. But if we have some sort of application that is just noting what's happening, some sort of log message, some sort of status message, and we want those to accumulate as we continue to run the program, or even run the program multiple times, then we might use append for that purpose. We might be putting in a message like log message at, and then I might give it a the current time, something like that. Here I'm just going to run this and write log messages to the file, and I look at the bottom, you can see it gave the current time. That's to give you a sense of when append is more appropriate. But just to recap, writing to a file is quite easy. We either use A or W at the command line. We're opening the file same as before. The name of your file handle is up to you, and then we can write whatever lines we want to the file, just making sure to know that we need to include new line characters where appropriate, where we want to drop down a line after writing.